In this episode, we talk about the voting process and the Supreme Court verdict regarding it. We also talk about AstraZeneca admitting that its COVID-19 vaccine Covishield causes blood clots. But first, we talk about why Hong Kong and Singapore withdrew products from MDH and Everest. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda, and you are listening to 3 Things, the Indian Express news show. Last week, Hong Kong and Singapore withdrew 4 spice mixes from 2 of India's top spice manufacturers, MDH and Everest, after finding high levels of ethylene oxide in them, a pesticide which is known to cause cancer. To understand how ethylene oxide affects the body and how Indian authorities have responded to this, Indian Express's Anonna Dutt joins us. Anonna, what have the Hong Kong and Singapore authorities said while withdrawing the spice mixes?
So both the authorities asked, shopkeepers and all to withdraw these spice mixes from the shelves. There were, I think, some 4 or 5 products across both countries that were withdrawn. And this was because of the presence of a compound called ethylene oxide in them. This compound is known to be carcinogenic to human beings. So the IARC, which is a WHO group that maintains a list of things that are carcinogenic to human beings, they have categorized ethylene oxide as the group 1 carcinogen, which is like the most carcinogenic.
And could you tell us what exactly is ethylene oxide and in what way is it known to affect the body?
So basically, ethylene oxide is a pesticide and it is usually used in the fumigation of crops to prevent bacterial infections like E. coli and Salmonella. So maybe that's where this contaminant gets into the spice mix from. As I said, it's a known carcinogen, means it can increase the risk of various cancers in people. And also, it can lead to certain DNA damage. That's how it would affect.
And tell us, what kind of regulations are there in India regarding ethylene oxide?
When we look at Singapore and Hong Kong, they said that the ethylene oxide levels were more than what is permitted. But while I'm not familiar with the laws in those countries, in India, ethylene oxide is not permitted at all in food products. And the FSSAI, which is the Indian food regulator, does not really test products going out of India, but its jurisdiction is on the safety of food items which are being sold within India. And to ensure that there is no problem that exists in India, they have now undertaken a drive to test these spice mixes that are available in India.
And Anonna, when it comes to the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, are there any specific spice-related regulations of checks that need to be cleared before being shared with the public?
Of course, this is a special drive that FSSAI is undertaking after these news reports have come out. But usually spices, just like any other food product available in the market, is sampled at random by food safety officers. And they have a prescribed set of tests to check for various contaminants. So, for example, like for milk, they would have certain contaminants like urea being the things that are most commonly found in that product. So for every food product, they have this list of most common contaminants and they have tests specified to check for these contaminants.
At a time when Hong Kong and Singapore have withdrawn spice mixes from MDH, we have learned that US authorities have refused about 1/3 of all spice-related shipments by MDH over the last 6 months. Can you tell us, what do we know about that?
So from what we've seen in the reports from the US, there has been an increase. So earlier, I think the rejection rate was about 15%. And there has now been an increase in that. And that has been mainly attributed to Salmonella contamination in the spice mixes. So while that's a different concern altogether, but yes, all of these news together have brought the spice mixes in India under scanner.
So, Anonna, you mentioned that FSSAI is now going to test spices in India. Do we know when the report can be made available?
So, FSSAI is right now collecting samples not just of MDH and Everest, it's collecting of all the brands from across states. Once these samples have been collected and processed in the labs, it will also take some time to put together a national report. So FSSAI officials have said that a consolidated report can be expected in about 20 days or so.
And next we talk about the voting process. Last Friday, the Supreme Court rejected pleas that proposed changes to the current voting mechanism. The petitioner in the case, the Association for Democratic Reforms, had demanded that we should return to using paper ballots, that the VVPAT slips should be verified and counted, and that these slips should be handed to the voters to verify before they drop it in the ballot box. Now, while the plea for the paper ballots was later withdrawn by the petitioner, the Supreme Court in its verdict rejected the other two prayers as well. And while there is no change for the voter, the court has now directed the Election Commission to include a symbol loading unit and microcontrollers to the verification process. To know more about this change and what happens when a candidate challenges the results, Indian Express's Damini Nath joins us. Damini, to begin with, can you explain to us what exactly happens when a voter goes to cast their vote?
Right. So before a voter even goes to a polling station, the first thing to do is make sure that they are enrolled on the electoral roll and check their name on the electoral roll, find out where their polling booth is, and accordingly go to that location. Once you go to a polling booth, the thing to remember is that you have to carry your voter ID or other IDs like the Aadhaar if you don't have a voter ID. If you're enrolled to vote as a voter in a particular polling booth, you will be allowed to vote even without a voter ID card as long as you're on the rolls in that area. So when you enter, you have to first, they'll check your name on the voter list, they'll check your ID proof. A polling official will put an ink mark on your finger and take your signature on a register. Then you will be asked to go into the voting compartment, which is kind of cordoned off from the rest of the polling booth. And the EVM ballot unit will be in front of you where you will make your choice and you'll hear a loud beep, which means that your choice has been recorded. And next to that would be a VVPAT machine where you will find the candidate you've selected. The name and symbol of the candidate will be printed on a piece of paper in that VVPAT machine. It will be in front of you for 7 seconds. Then it will get cut and drop into the compartment below.
And Damini, when it comes to the EVM, it requires a certain amount of preparation before it is put to use by the voters. And that is where the symbol loading unit or the SLU comes in. So could you tell us what exactly that is?
So the EVM essentially is 3 different parts. It is the control unit, the ballot unit, which is the one that the voter uses to cast their vote, and the VVPAT, which is the paper audit trail machine. So, according to the Election Commission, the EVM ballot unit, control unit, and VVPAT, they all have microcontrollers or memories, which are programmed at the time of manufacture. These basically are done agnostic of the candidate or party. There's no information for a particular constituency or a particular candidate on these memories, according to the EC. But when it's time for elections, just a few days before polling, when candidates of the particular constituency have been decided, process called symbol loading is undertaken. A symbol loading unit or SLU is basically a memory. It's attached to a laptop or PC. From there, a bitmap file containing information of the name, symbol, and serial number of the candidates of that constituency is loaded onto this SLU. This SLU is then connected onto the VVPAT and it transfers this file onto the VVPAT. So this is the only point in the entire pre-voting process where the candidates' details are loaded onto the machines.
So Damini, recently the Supreme Court gave directions to the Election Commission regarding the SLU and the microcontrollers. Can you talk about what it said?
So the Supreme Court on the 26th of April gave its judgment in another case where the EVMs were challenged again. The petitioners had wanted the court to consider 100% verification of VVPAT slips or a return to paper ballot. The Supreme Court declined both these pleas. However, it gave 2 directions. The one direction the court said was that the SLU would have to be stored along with the EVM and VVPAT for a period of 45 days after results are announced for a particular election. As of now, the EVMs are kept for 45 days because that is the time allowed for candidates or electors to challenge an election through an election petition. Now with the court's verdict, this SLU also becomes a part of the devices that are kept for 45 days in case there is a challenge to that particular election. The second part of the court's judgment was about these microcontrollers. There are these microcontrollers in the ballot units, control units, and VVPATs, which constitute an EVM. The court has said that the candidates who come second or third in a particular election, they will have the opportunity to seek verification of 5% of the EVMs microcontrollers in their parliamentary constituency or assembly constituency. So within 7 days of results being announced, a candidate can give it in writing that they want these microcontrollers to be verified. These will then be opened and checked by the engineers of the two EVM manufacturing companies along with the election officials and the candidates' representatives as well.
Right. And Damini, can you tell us what happens if a candidate questions the voting process or the results after the elections?
So the candidates, even now, they can challenge an election within 45 days. The process is very simple. They have to approach a court and file an election petition. As of now, the EVMs are kept stored in case there's an election petition. Now, with the court's judgment, even the SLUs will be stored for that period. Now, it is depending on the Election Commission to implement these orders. The Election Commission will have to put out standard operating procedures of how this will work, what happens in case a candidate challenges this, what happens if a candidate wants the SLUs to be inspected. So that the Election Commission will have to come out with the procedures.
And in case the devices are found to be tampered with, what happens in that case?
So the court has said that as of now, the candidates will have to bear the expense of having a verification of the microcontrollers. But if the microcontrollers have been found to be tampered with, the candidates will be refunded. And the court then, of course, has the option of cancelling their election and ordering a repoll for that constituency.
And Damini, does this verdict bring any change at all for the voters?
The voting process for the voter does not change at all with the Supreme Court's judgment. It is just that the candidates get another opportunity to seek more transparency and accountability in case they feel that there is something wrong with the particular election.
And in the end, we talk about the COVID-19 vaccine, Covishield. Global pharmaceutical giant AstraZeneca for the first time has admitted that its vaccine against COVID-19, Covishield, could cause low platelet counts and formation of blood clots in very rare cases. The pharmaceutical company is being sued in a class action over claims that its vaccine against COVID-19, developed with the University of Oxford, caused death and serious injury, including TTS, thrombosis and thrombocytopenia syndrome, which causes people to have blood clots and low blood platelet count. AstraZeneca's vaccine formula was licensed to Pune-based vaccine maker Serum Institute of India during the COVID-19 pandemic for the manufacture of Covishield. More than 174 crore doses of Covishield have been administered in India. The UK-based media organisation The Telegraph reported that in all 51 cases have been lodged in the High Court in the UK, with victims and grieving relatives seeking damages estimated to be worth of up to £100 million. A range of symptoms associated with TTS include breathlessness, pain in the chest or limbs, pinhead-sized red spots or bruising of skin in the area beyond the injection site, headaches, numbness in body parts, etc. TTS could mean a restriction in the blood flow due to clotting. Before the COVID-19 vaccines were rolled out in India, the Indian government had issued a fact sheet in January 2021 in which it specifically said that Covishield, the Indian variant of AstraZeneca's vaccine, should be given with caution to individuals with thrombocytopenia, that is, a condition of low platelet counts. Covishield and Covaxin were the two COVID-19 vaccines that were given to Indians. Then, in March 2021, European countries including France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands and Denmark temporarily paused the use of AstraZeneca's vaccine after a few cases of blood clotting were reported. The following month, the World Health Organization said that TTS was being reported in some cases after vaccinations with Covishield and Vaxzevria, which is the other trade name of AstraZeneca's vaccine. However, WHO had added, based on latest available data, the risk of TTS with Vaxzevria and Covishield vaccines appears to be very low. Data from the UK suggests that the risk is approximately 4 cases per million adults. Meanwhile, in May 2021, the Indian government said that 26 potential thromboembolic events or formation of clots in blood vessels had been reported since Covishield began to be administered. The Union Health Ministry had termed this possibility as minuscule and said that Covishield continues to have a definite positive benefit-risk profile with tremendous potential to prevent infections and reduce deaths due to COVID-19. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Shashank, Bhargava and me, Niharika, Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.